This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Sean Preston.
Welcome to another episode of the Good Neighbor Podcast. Today we have another good neighbor on with us, and that is Richard Savage of Savage Carpentry. What's going on, brother?
Not much. Happy to be here. Looking forward to a good conversation.
100%. Taking a look out at the weather today. Some more rain. Have a little fun story I didn't share with you before. We went backcountry camping this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
And we looked at the weather. Says 10% chance of rain. So we're like, okay, it's not going to rain because whenever does it rain at 10%? It never does. So we get we're talking just the backpacks, right? We're hiking, 30-minute hiking. And so I have a full backpack on the front and a backpack on the back with all of the stuff. And I have another backpack, which has the tarps. And I look over at my brother-in-law and I'm like, do we need these? And he's like, well, is it going to rain? And I'm like, it says 10%. We look up at the sky. Well, it looks like it might rain. I don't know.
Right.
Too much faith at that present moment was put into the Weather Network app. We got there, left the tarps, and right after we set up the tents, of course, it doesn't just rain. It comes down like cats and dogs. And we got no tarps, so that was a fun experience.
Yeah, that's brutal. I always try, for those situations, I try and think worst case outcome. So if you set the tarps up, worst case outcome is you just set the tarps up for no reason, right? But if you didn't set them up, like you said, you go through the experience of getting just drenched.
100%. And then it was gorgeous all weekend. Then on the way out, we knew it was going to rain. So we left about an hour earlier than we thought we were going to, and halfway out it started coming down. We got soaked again on the way out. But overall, great weekend. What were you up to the weekend?
Playing with my kids. We went down. We got a beach here locally. The kids play soccer as well. So Saturday we were playing soccer, and then Sunday we were at the beach. Outside, lots of outside all weekend, which was nice.
Very nice. And whereabouts is that?
We're located in Brecken, so we have on one way from us is a rock beach, and the opposite way there's a sand beach. So we can actually ride the ATVs in the street here as well. So we take the ATVs down to the beach, and we got fortunate yesterday. We got rained out, but it's on Lake Simcoe, so we can see it. You can see it coming across the lake, so you kind of have a bit of a guide,
right,
as to when the weather's going to change. But we got fortunate. We got rained out, but that was all good.
I know that side of the lake very well. I grew up going to Lazy Acres Family Campground with my family on Lake Dalrymple, and that is literally a stone's throw from where you're at. So
we've I've done one edition. I did one edition on Lake Dalrymple. One of my carpenters is actually in Seabright right there, which is just around the corner from there. So
literally just right around the corner. Beautiful area. Great lake as well too.
Oh yeah, we love it up here.
So why don't we dive into it? We've never met before.
I
took just a quick peek on your website. I don't like to do too much digging before a guest comes on the show because I want to really let my natural curiosity lead the conversation. But for those who are listening and for myself, why don't you tell us a little bit about your business?
Well, it's funny that you said you looked at the website. So I did the website myself because I'm a carpenter. I'm not a computer person, but I got it set up, and we've started paying for marketing, and they always harass me about the website. They're always you got to change this. So I'm constantly tweaking it, but it's funny that you checked it out. But so I started my carpentry journey. It was a little unique. I was homeschooled growing up, so it was myself and three sisters, and my mom worked full-time as a nurse. My dad was a pressman. My mom would work Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights, and then teach us Monday to Friday. And then when I was 15, there was a local builder who was doing some work, and I told him I was ready and available, and he wouldn't take me on until I was 16. So did part-time a little bit when I was 15 with him, but he didn't really want to hire me on until I was 16. So 16 started my formal apprenticeship. And then got my red seal, obtained my red seal at 21. And then I wasn't able to, around here is a lot of non-union work is what I wanted to do. And it's hard to make a lot of money non-union back then. So I jumped
Why was
onto.
that?
I think it's still nowadays as well. Like I think a lot of it, everything's just cost driven, right? So like a bathroom cost X, so it's hard to charge a client more than what the market will bear, sort of thing. And I think labor is your number one expense, right? So as a business owner, like if I send my team to go do something, like one of the most expensive things that I'm paying for is their labor, right? So the more that you pay your team, the more that it costs in the long run. So I think people like contractors a lot of contractors will say, now I think it's getting a little better, but back then it was, we will pay you X, right? And there's no seal, like there's a ceiling essentially on what they'll pay you. So regardless of how you perform or what you do, there's a ceiling on what you can make. Which it was very hard back then. Everyone was screaming that it's hard to buy a house, right? Just like today, everyone says it's like insane. It's getting insane. It's very insane. Back then, it wasn't quite as bad, but it was still hard. Houses were still expensive, and I was like doing the math, and I was like, I'm gonna have to work for like 10 years and set this amount aside, and like to be able to buy a house. So yeah, I think a lot of it's just cost. It was just cost driven. Projects are very cost driven, so you couldn't get a lot out of. Everyone was just paying their carpenters whatever they were paying them, and that was it, right? So that also, I was always doing stuff on the side. So I'd go work with my boss, and then I like always had stuff on the side on evenings and weekends, just to try and be able to make enough to get ahead. Is essentially what I was trying to do with that. But yeah, then I finished my apprenticeship and then jumped out to Saskatchewan. I actually worked at a potash mine for a couple of years as a carpenter to kind of get the money to be able to put the money down on a house. But I started the business right before I left for Saskatchewan, and I was very like impatient. I didn't understand like how business works. So I pretty much started my business and then was wondering why I didn't have any jobs. You know what I mean? It was I was very impatient with the process, but I got it all set up and everything. And then, I came back from Saskatchewan, worked for a buddy of mine, was working with a crew and invited me out. So worked for them for a couple of years doing insurance restoration. And then, it was all just like, I was still doing stuff on the side to try and get ahead. At this time I had a house, and my girlfriend at the time was my wife. Now, we were just trying to get ahead. It was very hard. I was working in the evenings and weekends plus my full-time job, and just got like, I just got burnt out with it. It was a lot going on. There was so much work on the side that I was doing. So that kind of was the catalyst of me starting the business, was to try and like, to escape that from having to work on the side and having to work full time and all the hours. And I wanted to have kids. I didn't want to bring kids in and then not ever see them. And I just didn't know how that would all, how it would work, having kids and working as an employee, essentially as a carpenter for somebody else. It was just my life back then was like very chaotic. And then, I just got burnt out. My wife was like, well, you wanted to start the business, so you might as well start the business. So what I did and how I got out of that like rat race of doing all that stuff was, I got burnt out in about September. It was the fall. So I was on a basement at the time. So I finished the basement, and then calls were coming in. So I just says, if you'd like it done, I can do it in the spring. We're booking for the spring, right? Realistically, I was just burnt out. I couldn't take on anymore. So I says, if you want it done, I'll do it in the spring. If you want to wait. So calls kept coming in. I kept bumping them to the spring. It wasn't a lot. I would get calls sporadically whenever. And so I bumped everybody to the spring. And then I had about a month worth of work lined up in the springtime, and gave my 2 weeks, and then figured if I started my side stuff full time for that month, somebody's bound to call me within that month for something else for the next month. So that's kind of how that was kind of like the catalyst of it.
Yeah, started snowballing from there. How long have you been open now for?
So that was 8.5 years ago.
Nice.
8.5 years ago when that happened. Yeah, when I quit my job. I started the business in 2012, right before I went to Saskatchewan, and got it all set up, but I wasn't doing it full time. It was like something that I'd love to do down the road. but yeah, that was 8.5 years ago is when I quit my job and dove into it full time. Yeah.
Wonderful story, man. That was a nice, usually my second question, which is tell us about your journey. You did that and explained that quite well.
Yeah, I jumped into it.
For our listeners,
Yeah.
tell us about the business.
Yeah. So currently, so I started the business ultimately to be able to provide a place where people can come to work, feel fulfilled in what they do, while improving the lives of our clients by enhancing the experience they have living in their home, right? And we do that through general contracting. So general contracting is how we fulfill that for our clients. So we do renovations and additions essentially. We have a core five we call it. So it's additions, renovations, new garage builds. We do main floor renos and basements. So essentially, we try and stick to like large scale renos. And then currently the team's made up of myself, and I have an office manager, Kim, and then we have a lead carpenter, Katie, and then I have my sister, who's a carpenter, also drywaller by trade, and then we have Nick. So there's 3 carpenters in the field, and then myself and Kim manage like the behind the scenes stuff. We have a project management software that we use that we funnel all the projects through, that we manage all the communication with the clients and that. So Kim helps me extensively on the back end, communicating with clients. And then the team, Katie, runs things I facilitate and manage the 2 sides of the business.
That's awesome. I mean, there's a lot of contractors that are out there. We come across a bunch, and if you go anywhere searching online, you'll probably find a whole whack of them. And so, what would you say makes you guys stand out, maybe a little bit different versus the pack?
So I think that
there's a curveball there, by the way.
I know. It's good though. I love conversation. It's very, at the end of the day, contractors are just trying to figure it out, right? So, I thought for a long time that contractors, when they were set up, they all had it figured out. But so when you ask that question, it brings like a wave of a whole bunch of stuff. But essentially, we use project management software. So communication is super important. So if somebody calls us to go to a job site, I'm the technical. Kim is she takes the notes. So we show up. Somebody wants an addition done. I'm not showing up on myself with a clipboard. I show up with I don't have anything to take notes on me. I'll have a tape measure maybe. So Kim takes all the notes. So I'll conversate with the homeowner, find out why we're there, what they're looking to accomplish, what their vision is for the project. And while I'm having that conversation, it's getting uploaded to our project management software. So everything's like, I think that's a big thing. If you're a contractor out there and you're like spinning your tires, like having somebody that manages communication, that's not the owner of the business, I think is so important. Because it frees up space in my mind. So yeah, we have, so that's how we're big on communication. And then yeah, having a drywaller on staff is like fantastic too. But I think at the core too, something that the reason I started the business was to free up my time from my kids. Right. I didn't understand, how am I working 6:30 to 6 at night? Then I got to come home and I have kids and I have all this. So I've set the business up so we work like 8:30 to 4:30. Usually we don't work evenings, we don't work weekends. I give the team grief if they're working long hours. If they want to, of course, like I'll let them run with it. But we all have young kids, and I want to provide the freedom of self-employment to the people that work like with us, right? So all of my team members, I want them to feel that independence financially. So we also like pay our team a lot more than a market rate, so they would make more working with us than somebody else in our area. I try and stay at the top of that, or on par at the top of that, but then give them the freedom of self-employment, right? Like they're all employees, but like having the flexibility, like we all have young kids. So I've got 2 young kids, they're 4 and 5, right? Katie, my carpenter's got 2 young kids. Nick's got 2 young kids. So it's very managing, like work comes second to your family, right? So like,
Totally.
we say that work should be something that's a part of life, not something that pulls you away from it, right? So work is, you come to work and you work hard with us, and that will allow you the fuel to be able to go out and provide for your families and enjoy the weekends. And if you want to take a long weekend, we're very flexible schedule wise, and we're open and transparent with our clients about that. Like, there's some days we'll get a call and we got to go pick a kid up from school, right? So instead of just doing that randomly, like, part of our welcome package, we explain that to our clients, right? We say we all have young kids. We're a very family driven company. We practice what we preach in that sense. So they may be here working on this day, and somebody may have to rip out to grab the kids, or they may have to leave early on a Friday, or X, Y, and Z, right? So we're very transparent about how we are. And I was scared of doing that at first with our clients, but you also, something else that I've learned in business is you attract the clients that you cater to, right? So if you cater to people that are very, very demanding, and they want more than you're able to offer, if you tend to those clients, they'll just come at you in droves, right? So we just put a stake in the ground and says we're very family oriented. Here's who we are. Here's what we do. Here's how we do it. And we'd love to connect with you and work with you. And it goes the opposite way, that like all of our clients are like phenomenal. You know what I mean? Like, it's really, I spent a lot of years stressed out about the clients that I was working with, or jobs that I felt that I had to do. But yeah, when you really lean into that, you put your family first and you keep that as the motivation, right? Is this going to allow me to spend more time with my family, or is it going to allow my team members to be able to spend more time with their families? Is it a demanding job? Because every project's unique. So some projects may not allow for that, right? Like, some of them are very schedule driven, right? When I was young, when I was 17, 18, 19, 21, whatever, trying to save for a house, I'd go working crazy. Like, I would work a ton. And so there's like a time and a place for that. So it's like trying to manage that within the business, and having the business facilitate that for the team members is super important for us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in life you have boxes that need to be checked. It seems like you guys are checking a fair amount of those boxes. I also feel like, that's kind of nice for the homeowner as well too. Like, typically, I mean, a lot more people work from home now, but they're either working or they're out at work. So you're able to get in there, during the day and finish or continue the work that needs to be done. And then, they're done work, and so are you guys. So no one's bugging anybody's supper, unless it's something that needs to get done because you've got timelines you're adhering to. You've got supplies that are coming in, and there's certainly an order of things in your line of work. So I think that's pretty cool. A lot of people, we get a lot of guests on the show, so we interview a lot of people.
Right.
Seems like you got it dialed in, brother. Jeff and I certainly feel the same way when it comes to that stuff. I call it harmony, having ever balance. So we typically do work more than we play, but at the same time, making sure that there's enough time to have both, like have your cake and eat it too. And that's the best part about being a business owner, is having that flexibility to be able to kind of manage that schedule. So nice to see that you got that teed up.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of what it is just managing your time, right? So that's something that I didn't do when I was younger. Like, if you don't want to work evening, like when we were starting, I set that out for the business, not to work evenings, weekends, which was like a huge thing, because at the time I was working a lot of evenings and weekends, right? And then it's like how to bring that in so that it works with your team members, I think is like, just working hard to facilitate that is super important. Yeah, because you have to work. You know what I mean? You can't, like, the scales have to be tipped towards the work for sure. But how do you do that and run a business and be a husband and be a father and be a good leader? Brings a lot of challenges.
You also mentioned something there that I think is important to note for people who are listening. But when the general public hires a business, they, if you're not a business owner, you don't think like a business owner. And so you're not typically seeing everything that's going on in the business. And obviously professionals are professionals for a reason, because there's an order on how you do things and quality of workmanship that goes into to any line of work. So when you have, when you pay your employees more, and you take care of them more, and everybody's got a young family, and you got a culture set up, that goes a long way for keeping your staff. And what people sometimes don't know is, you have one person who has a great experience, and then another person maybe doesn't, or there's not consistency there, especially when it comes to contractors, but they don't see the behind the scenes. Maybe they have a churn rate, turnover in guys. Maybe the culture is not what it needs to be. And so having to rehire and retrain people, there's a process that's part of that, and that can sometimes affect quality work. So I just thought it was important to kind of bring that to surface. If anybody missed that, it's nice to know that there's a business out there. You seem like you got it pretty dialed in, building a culture. I'm a culture guy. I built up a $12 million business. As a sales director, I had 6 account managers and 42 event management staff under me, and I had to label culture as a number one thing. And we dialed that in, and we did not have a lot of people who left, and that's how we grew. We grew substantially. So,
yeah, and so I think that's a big thing that's missing in contracting now is, I think there's a lot. I wouldn't paint the whole industry with a brush, but because there's a lot of phenomenal contracting businesses out there. And I've even people have come to me and asked me for jobs and says, we're not hiring, but if you want to work with a good team, go work for X, Y, and Z. Like, because I think we're very big on, so Kim was a sales manager for a lot of years. So we're very big on like the DISC personality test. Right. So not so much we ultimately down the road, we may end up giving the test to our employees, but understanding how people think in relation to how that transfers into work, right? So like if a D or an I or an S or a C are in different situations, they all act differently, right? So, and then you get multiple of them working together. So it's a lot of managing personalities and also clients, right? So a D client that we're working for is going to want a certain type of communication versus an I. Like I's and D's for us, we try and spot them right away and figure out how people like to be communicated to, because I feel like, and I was like this, honestly, I was like this when I started the first 5 years of my business. I was like this. I had a process and I funneled everybody through it, right? Regardless of X, Y, and Z. So if you want to work with us, here's how we do it. And that was just like it. But understanding now, you get different clients. Like if somebody's very detail oriented, right? They don't care about, some people just want to know the price and they want you to execute it. This is what they want. This is what they want to pay, and they want you to execute on it. Other people want to have everything articulated and explained to them on a very deep level, right? Some people value that, some people don't. So understanding, and that goes top to bottom. So that goes from our clients right down to our team members and our subcontractors as well. So understanding what's important to people. And that's all like a part of the culture is building. I'm trying to build a business that I would have wanted to work for as a carpenter, you know what I mean? So we try and present ourselves in a way that people would want to come and work with us, right? And we try and manage everybody effectively so that we're all working cohesively together with ourselves as well as with our sub trades as well as with the clients. So there's a lot going on personality wise and the whole the dynamics of all of that.
Are there any like myths or misconceptions that you guys see a lot in your business?
I think it would be like a 2-part. So there's misconception on the business side and then on the consumer side. So when I first started, I saw other contractors and I assumed that they had it all together. The business was quote unquote, I call it finished. So when I talk to my team internally, I say, when the business is finished, here's how we're going to execute stuff. But the reality of, and it's encouraging the young contractors, the young business owners, is the reality of it is if you're pursuing excellence, you're constantly changing, right? You're constantly evolving, you're constantly pivoting, so that there's never like a stake in the ground. You have it figured out and you're like a successful business owner. Like it's continual. Like it always moves and it always changes and you always have to adapt and you always have to pivot. So as soon as you get comfortable, and you can stay comfortable, but as soon as you get comfortable, it'll like change. So that's a misconception that I had going into it, was that I would just like set it up and have a business. And then on the consumer side, I think if you're hiring a contractor, a big misconception is maybe like the hiring process. I think it's very hard. I would be terrified to hire a contractor if I wasn't a contractor, right? Like, I think it's, we've heard like tons of horror stories. Like, we had a client built a garage and they had a concrete crew come out and like butchered the concrete. But they presented themselves well. So it's like, I think a big misconception is you should take a lot of time finding a contractor and vetting them. Even something as simple as like asking for references, right? So if you hire a contractor and they give you references, you can call a reference. It comes back to the personalities. So you can call a reference, and a question you should ask is, what are 3 things that this contractor could have done to improve the experience that you had working with them, right? So it's not a yes or no question. It forces them to like tell a story. So, and if every contractor should be able to like take you to their jobs and like give you references, but a lot of people ask the references like, so how is he to work with? And just very generic. But if you ask them what are 3 things that this contractor could have done to improve the experience, and you call multiple references, you'll get kind of like a story that you can connect together to kind of help. You should definitely take your time finding a contractor. So I don't know if that kind of ties into that. But
yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, nobody ever thinks of this kind of stuff. Like, no one went to school to learn how to buy shit.
Right.
Right. So it's not until you get educated that, hey, when, there's somebody you need to hire for a job, whether it's a roofer, whether it's a general contractor, whether it's, a painter, whatever the case is, lawn maintenance person, even.
Right.
Sometimes people don't ask the right questions, and then, lo and behold, they miss something in the process, and it's not the best experience. So knowing questions to ask, like what are 3 things that this person could have improved upon, is going to really tell a good story. Because if they nailed it, they're going to have a hard time coming up saying like, look, I'm having a hard time coming up with things. The communication was great. Then they're going to start pointing out all of the benefits and selling that business to the other person. And if there is one thing that you could have done that you didn't, maybe a future customer voices that to you. And then as a business owner, that's gold,
Yeah.
Nobody's
because
perfect.
on the other thing too, on the contractor side, so I've had my business full time for 8.5 years, and I've given references quite a bit. In 8.5 years, I've only had 1 client call a reference in the 8.5 years that I've been doing business. So a lot of people are not calling the references. And like, go and walk jobs. Like, if a client called me up and says, hey, we want to work with you, but we're not working with you till we see one of your projects, like, we could show up on a job and we could walk you through, meet the homeowner. Like, there'd be stipulations with it, like, that may not work currently with our clientele. Our clients are like fantastic. So like, for instance, we just finished a deck for some amazing clients. And if I called them up and says, hey, I have another client wants to build a deck, could we bring these people by to take a look? They would say like, absolutely. You know what I mean? So it's, I think, you can just put in the effort because you're really interviewing them, right? And it's your money that you're spending. So you should know like exactly where it's going, how it's being spent. Even as simple, like, we went and looked at a project last week, and the client, we told them where we were planning to drop the portable toilet, where where we would think about parking the trailers. And they would say that we were the only contractor that was like outlining what the property would look like while the project was going on. Right. So it's, and that's the thing too, like, good contractors are out there. So it's, but yeah, don't be bashful about interviewing them, and trying to find out what they do well and what they don't do well and what they struggle with. But yeah.
Yeah, I think communication is the main driver here.
Yeah.
Not just for this conversation, but anything when you're going to hire a company to come and do something. Or just like in a relationship, I mean, you have to have a good line of communication with your partner. That's how that's how you move forward and organize yourself as a human being. So, having a good contractor come in and outline some work, or if you're going to buy, you're the buyer. We're looking to hire someone to come in, and you need to be asking the right questions and make sure that you fit. I mean, it's a fit, right? Obviously, they need to be able to do good work, and so that's why you got a website. That's why you got references and stuff like that. And then if the communication is there, well, how do you work well with that other person? Because even if those other two things are there, like if you're not getting along and the communication is not there, well, it's not going to be a pleasant experience for
right. Yeah. And that's the other thing. It comes down to like not rushing as well. Like, don't feel obligated that you have to go with certain people because of X, Y, and Z, right? Like, is you're spending your own money, you can do the homework, and don't be shy about the questions. Like we literally, a job that we're on right now, the client came to me and says that he feels bad because he's asking so many questions, right? So a lot of reputable contractors out there have systems in place for a bombardment of questions, right? So you're not bogging them down by asking them questions. Like, you have the right to know where the money is being spent, how it's being spent, where things are going, right? Like, good contractors have all of that systematized to the point where they can explain it to you or get the information and if they don't know the answer, they'll tell you that they don't know the answer and that they'll go and figure it out, and they'll come back and we'll have a meeting about it. Right. So a lot of the contractors that I know are about the client experience. Right. So they're very open to it.
So you mentioned a bit, you have a young family and that type of thing. I talked about having that harmony between, working and then shutting it down and then living your life. And so when you're living your life, generally speaking, you're having fun. Everybody's got hobbies. They got things that they like to do. And we like asking this question on the show because it's nice to talk about the business and know that you have a good business. You have good communication, all of those talking points that we were speaking about earlier. But it's also nice to know the people behind the scenes. We are human beings. That's how we connect very well together, is by peeling the curtain back a little bit and just getting real with it. So when you're not working on your business, what does Richard like to do for fun?
Yeah, so I think it'll change and there'll be seasons. But currently, I love hanging out with my kids and my wife. So they're very big into soccer. They play every weekend. Like I said, we're very close to a couple of different beaches. So in the summertime, we're like in the water. Love playing in the water and swimming, playing soccer. We're very big in getting outdoors. So yeah, that's primarily what we do. Is we're at the beach. We're playing soccer. My wife's got a cottage we go up to. Okay, we book usually once a year. We'll go up there for like a week. So we're up at the cottage and hanging out with the kids is the currently right now. That's what we're doing. Yeah, with the ATVs and yeah.
That's all a lot of fun. I've got an ATV myself. Whereabouts the cottage?
Her cottage is 6 Mile Lake. Yeah, so it's up to 400 there. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's an aspiration for myself and my significant other. We want to buy a piece of land up north, maybe 2.5 hour drive.
Oh yeah.
We're just like I was mentioning at the top of the show about camping. We were camping in the area that we want to eventually buy.
Yeah.
But just get a piece of land, just whatever, and then throw a used camper on it or something, and then just have a 5-year build plan. But just have something to be able to go up on the weekends and enjoy. I feel phenomenal today. I got to float on a tube with a fishing rod in my hand for like 6 hours.
Yeah.
I brought sunscreen.
I was gonna say,
in this little pouch. And like I didn't move from that tube for like 6 hours. I didn't catch anything, but I got a wicked tan. I don't know if you can see for those on video, but I've got a tan line at the very top of my head because I put my ball cap backwards, and that's the only part it was covering was right up there. So hard to see on video, which is good.
Yeah. So would you get something on the water? Have you been looking at stuff, or would you get stuff on the water?
I definitely would want something with some frontage, and then it has to be on a good fishing lake. I mean, Julie and I we love to fish.
Yeah.
And I'd like, I'm picky about it too. There needs to be bass and walleye in the lake. And that gives us a bit of some variation. I mean, walleye, some of the best tasting fish around.
Yeah.
Great to fish. Different kinds of ways that you can fish for them. You can lazy fish, you can troll, you can jig, you can cast for them. All kinds of fun stuff. But bass fishing is also super fun. The fights are crazy, and you have to get into some crazy water. My favorite fishing of all time is topwater bass fishing. That is the coolest shit ever. You're just, you look away for 1 second, you hear a splash, and it just comes out of nowhere, and you got to be so reactionary with it. And then, of course, the fight afterwards and them jumping, and they also taste pretty good as well too. So we like fish, super healthy meat too.
Yeah, we just last year was the first year that the kids were putting like the worms on the hook themselves at the cottage. Oh, nice. So it was it's a lot of fun. When they're super young, it's almost like stressful because they have the rods and it's like the hooks are flying everywhere and everything's just going on. But yeah, last year was the first year that they were like wanting to put the hooks on or fish the worms on the hook and taking them out of the fish. And so we're going up end of August too. So that's the only time we really get to fish, but that's something else I'd love to, if we had more time, or make more times to go fishing a lot more. Yeah,
it's hard to do it during the week unless you're on the water yourself, or you're just around the corner, working all day, and then the last thing you want to do is then go load the boat in the water and then do all the work because there's a bit of work to it.
And we have Simcoe close to us too, but it's like Simcoe is such a big lake that it's very like it turns very quick. So like you go out, it could be super nice, and then like we even see that when we go swimming. Like we'll be out there and there'll be like no waves, and then by the time we're like leaving, the waves are like gradually getting bigger and bigger. And so we've thought about getting a boat and going out there, but it's very we'll see. A couple of years maybe. Yeah.
So we like to ask this question, like we talked before we came on the air, I guess we'll call it, is people connect in certain ways, and as human beings, we certainly connect through some vulnerability. In life, we decide to pick a path, we choose one, and then we walk that path of life. And there's a lot of things on that path that are out of our control, and life will throw things at us. They'll throw hardships, life challenges. Sometimes people experience tragedies. And I've always said this on the show that I have an affinity for human beings and their ability to be able to persevere through hard times in life. I was speaking with somebody today. They're having just a rough go. Great human being, good business, and just some things that are not going their way. And he is a big proponent of the universe and how it kind of sort of takes care of itself. And there's two ways that you can look at it. You can look at it like, oh, the universe is doing this to me. Why is it doing this to me? But I said this to him as some words of encouragement. I said, the universe is never doing anything to you. It's doing it for you. And you just can't see it right now, but you'll look back on it. And it's all a point of perspective. Obviously, if somebody's tragically passing away, that it's not the universe doing anything for you, but we find these silver linings, try to see the glass half full, hang on to hope. There's the only ways to move forward, because we have to move forward. So I wanted to ask if you've ever experienced a hardship, a life challenge, maybe you overcame it, maybe it made you better, maybe it made you stronger, maybe you took some silver linings from it.
Yeah. So, that's a good point about how you say, like, talking about perspective. So for me, like many people, COVID was like difficult. So for me personally, I didn't have any employees at the time. And so when it got shut down, we actually had our two daughters within a year. So 3 days of the year, they're the same age. And my wife was off on mat leave, and her mat leave had run out, so she didn't have the income for a year. So my wife didn't have the income for the year. All of my clients that I had at the time called me up and says they wanted to put the jobs on pause because they didn't know what was going to happen. So, perspective is a crazy thing, because, I see it differently looking back at it now, but at the time it was very, very difficult for me, feeling like, I had walked away from a steady paycheck to build a business, and then now I'm not able to produce an income from the business. So, because essentially as contractors, we weren't allowed to source new work. So there was fines that were put in place if we got contracts signed within a certain amount, like a window when we were shut down. So the only way that you were able to go out and work is if you had contracts in place prior to the shutdown. Essentially is how it worked. So I was only able to wrap up what I had. So yeah, I'm fortunate that my wife's the only one that knows how bad it got for me mentally. I ended up getting into therapy during that season of my life. And it taught me how to essentially, it taught me a lot about how your mind works. Yeah. So post-COVID, coming out of that, I'm very aggressive pursuing that, understanding how mental health works and how, because I think it's different for everybody, but how it works for myself personally, to make sure that I don't ever get to a position that I was in. And when you talk about perspective, like if somebody's been there and they can't see a way out, it's very strange. I don't know how to describe it, but if you've been there, you know the feeling. If you haven't been there, it's very hard to explain that feeling to somebody else that hasn't been there. And I think that naturally we improve our mental health, right? Being part of a community, connecting with people. It's very people. Look, what you're doing with this podcast is phenomenal. But when you don't have that connection, you don't have that community, your mental health can deteriorate without you realizing it. And it's very something I learned in therapy that I didn't know before was how aggressive your mind is with like fight and flight and that sort of stuff. So like naturally you think negatively to protect yourself. And if you don't, me personally, I have to be aggressive with positivity, right? So I like practice gratitude quite a bit, and I'm working on a bunch of that. But I have to be aggressive with it personally, because if you don't pursue the positivity, then the negativity spirals very quickly. And then when you talk about perspective, like I literally remember thinking back just I remember very specific days and not understanding how it will ever change, right? Like I literally couldn't wrap my head around it. How like the way that I was feeling back then, I literally didn't think that it would ever change. I didn't understand how it could change or if it would change. And that's also, so coming out of that, so I went through therapy, and then coming out of that, I essentially just realized that I wanted to do business differently. And that's where I rebranded everything. We joined the Home Builders Association. We got into being a recognized adaptive living contractor, so building with accessibility in mind as well. But that all stemmed from, that's the silver lining, right? Being on so looking back on it, I would have been pissed at myself if I came back to myself back then and says, hey, someday this is going to be great. You're going to have a business with this and that. Like I wouldn't have understood that. But that would definitely be the silver lining, is like going through that process forced me to learn a lot about myself and how I react mentally to things and how I react to situations. And just learning to like protect myself mentally from getting back to those situations. And then, yeah, it forced me to grow the business beyond myself, which was fantastic.
The silver linings are the coolest part to any story. How we can look back on that and take that piece of information and really turn that into a positive. I, like yourself, went through at the time in 2020. I was still employed. I was still working in the car business on the marketing side, and everything was, it was okay. It was okay. It wasn't until we started kind of getting back to it in 2021.
Right.
When that year started, I thought that was like the worst year I think I've ever had.
Yeah.
I just went to build, we built that business, and it crashed and burned. Just watching everything you built for 9 years just slowly deteriorate, and then watch the financial component to it just absolutely deteriorate with it. That company's not even around anymore.
Right.
So, you work for 9 years for a show and nothing. And And then I had to go walk down one or two more paths that had dead ends or that didn't work out or that severely affected my mental state as well. I tried to go and be a business owner and flip my 9 to 5 to evenings and weekends. The biggest mistake I've ever done. I didn't see or have the foresight to see that was going to be a massive problem, not just
Right.
for like my life, but like the mental repercussions that come with it. Cause you're just constantly fighting to get that income, but also I couldn't take care of my dog. I couldn't spend time with my family. I wasn't in a relationship at that time, but that wouldn't have worked out even if I was in one.
Right.
So I got to a point where I had to make a call, and thankfully I did. I was about maybe 3 weeks away from like my whole family and doing like an intervention on me saying,
Yeah.
hey, we're watching, you're about to self implode. But I was smart enough to kind of figure out what was going on. I had to make that change. And obviously for the better, you pull those silver linings, and as much pain and suffering as I had to endure both physically and mentally from that, now we're here shooting the shit on a badass podcast. So I'm okay.
Yeah. And then also like the other thing coming out of that is like, for me, and I'm sure that you've seen it too, some sort of aspects, but you can start to see, for me personally anyways, I saw what took me down that road, right? So now if I have a certain project that comes up, or if there's different situations that come up, I can foresee, oh, I've been down that road. Oh, if I take that job, I know that I got to get concrete at Saturday at 7 a.m. And I know that I'm going to, you know what I mean? And it's all these small things that compound. But being what I've been through, and I'm sure, because it gives you the calluses as well, like being on the other side of it, you can,
Yeah.
I can foresee, I can foresee a little bit on. So now I'm like just aggressive, and I do it for my team as well. I'm aggressive about how we do things to make sure that if it's not a hell yeah, it's a hard no. You know what I mean? So that's something that I've started telling myself coming out of that as well, is like, just a lot of it was just doing stuff for other people, and putting myself in situations that I was overcommitted to a lot. But yeah, you can, having the foresight now that you're being on the other side of it, it's very you just learn, and then you use what you've learned to pivot through the ever-evolving world of business now. Yeah.
The experience is key, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So what's one thing that you wish our listeners knew about your business?
I would probably say that I wish people would know that I would say we're available if you have any questions about contracting, right? I don't know. For me personally, I'm very fortunate to have, I have a mentor of mine, the guy I took my apprenticeship with. I can call him and say, hey, I've been in this situation. What would you do? Or how have you handled this in the past? But I'm very open to people calling me up and they're wanting to plan a renovation and they're not sure, because I think people think that they have to commit to a contractor, or like we only really service Brecken to Aurelia. So if you're outside of that or inside of that and you're having work done and you're not sure, and I feel like we have the ability for people to leverage our knowledge. We do occasionally get people that call us up, but if you have questions or if you're going through stuff business wise, and you're unsure and you love to, like, there's probably 2 or 3 friends of mine that are contractors. We call each other up all the time and connect business wise. So we're approachable. Like, you can give us a call if you have any questions. Not so much about working with us, but on the business aspect of things, if you're struggling, if you're working 60 hours a week and you're not sure how to get ahead, I can definitely provide the information that I've learned through my experience. And I love talking with people about business. So.
Amazing. I think a lot of people will definitely see some value from this episode and take away a lot of educational components, learning about some of the stuff that we don't necessarily get to see when it comes to the contracting world and the behind the scenes stuff. And so for those who are interested and would like to reach out to you, what's one of the best ways that they can go ahead and do
So you can get in touch with us through our website. Pretty much the majority of the information's up there. So you have the website. If you punch in Savage Carpentry on Google, all of our information comes up. I still manage everything. So if you shoot a message to the business or get in touch with the business, it comes across my plate. We're on Instagram. I like to post on Instagram and stay up to date on what we're doing and who we are as a company. So yeah.
So what's the website and what's your IG handle?
Oh man. So the website savagecarpentry.com. The IG handle is Savage Carpentry with a blue logo. I don't even remember off the top of my head.
I'm sure people will probably be able to find it.
Yeah. So. I have an old one. I pay a lot of money to have my name out on Google. So if you punch in Savage Carpentry on Google, I would hope that we come up.
Yeah, you come up. I did the search earlier. You come up. It's all good.
Yeah. Awesome.
Wonderful, man. Killer conversation. That was a lot of fun.
Yes, I appreciate
you coming on the show.
Appreciate having me. It was a good time.
No worries, man. Talk soon.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast Midhurst. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnpmidhurst.com. That's gnpmidhurst.com or call 705-413-3775.